Remember when the COVID-19 pandemic triggered toilet paper shortages due to panic buying? Could history repeat itself, but this time with your favorite matcha latte? What's up, everyone? I'm Dominic, aka Philly Swiss, and welcome back to the Buckle Up podcast, where we reflect, unlearn, and navigate the chaos of adulting one bumpy detour at a time. Buckle up because life comes with detours, not directions. Today, we're diving into the global matcha shortage and how this green tea powder beverage can influence our financial behaviors. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever found yourself panic buying? Let me know in the comments. The reason I wanted to talk about this on my channel is because of Tatler Asia's Instagram post that appeared on my feed. As a matcha drinker myself, I was keen on reading the article as this could potentially affect me and my meal prep breakfast or my homemade matcha tea lattes. But my concern is more about how people behave when they hear that there's a shortage. They turn into what we call Hamsterkäufe, like the panic buying of toilet paper during the COVID-19 pandemic. Remember that? As soon as FOMO hits, supplies deplete faster, but not just because of panic buyers, but because of people who want to make money reselling them at inflated prices, just like in the pandemic with the hand sanitizers. But what caused this shortage? Could it be all of those Coachella festival goers who wanted to post on social that they too had a matcha there? Kidding. Coachella is not the culprit here, but the behavior of posting on social and the hype. If you're tired of feeling like you're falling behind or scrambling whenever shortages happen, give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell for more content on how you can change your mindset with lifestyle spending habits that help you stay comfortably ahead. First, let's talk about matcha. Tencha is a type of Japanese green tea leaf, specifically the type you use to make matcha, which is traditionally used in tea ceremonies. The leaves are steamed to stop oxidation, dried, and then the stems and veins are removed. The remaining leaves are then ground into the green, finely powder we know. It skyrocketed in popularity thanks to wellness trends, appealing aesthetics on social media, numerous health benefits, and delicious matcha flavored treats. Can I have some mochi, please? I remember how matcha started gaining popularity through social media, specifically on Instagram and Pinterest, about 10 years ago, so around 2015. I remember my Instagram feed was full of aesthetic pictures of matcha lattes. While I was making my matcha with just hot water and a chasen, a bamboo whisk to stir, I was wondering whether or not to try the milk-based version. As you can see here, I liked it. So I got mine from Starbucks. If I remember correctly, Starbucks' original matcha powder contained sugar. It was essentially a pre-sweetened blend, probably because as matcha was being introduced and not everyone is used to the pronounced bitterness of matcha, especially depending on the quality grade they use. So if you're trying to get more people to like it and eventually get used to the taste, it makes sense that it was sweetened when it was first introduced. Eventually, the superfood craze started. You could ask that they don't add additional sweeteners, and I think it was around this time that Starbucks anyway changed their matcha powder to sugar free. This was great because you could opt to have it sweetened if you still wanted it sweet and choose how much sweetness you'd like. The matcha latte became especially popular at this time because it was an alternative to coffee. If you didn't like the crash once the effects of the caffeine wore off, matcha was superior. While I was seeing a lot of aesthetic images on Instagram and Pinterest of people having their morning matchas, other content was mostly about the health benefits of matcha. What I noticed post pandemic when it comes to matcha content on TikTok, it's either people showing a new place to get your matcha latte, and all the places always seem to be the best place to get your matcha fix. Yeah, sure, just like the other 100 ones you showed us. But I also noticed performative wellness content that use matcha as a prop, just to get that soft life or that girl kind of vibe and aesthetic, and making it a status symbol. So while we've been sipping on our matcha lattes and flexing our frothy cups, the demand has exploded. Let's take a look at what the media is saying about the matcha shortage and why this beloved green tea powder is becoming harder to come by. So I mentioned earlier that I saw the post on Tatler about the matcha shortage, which brought me into this deep dive. Here's what the publications and media outlets are saying. So here we have Tatler Asia's article that was published on the 30th of April 2025. Inside the matcha mania, why is your favorite green tea powder facing a global shortage? Here's the tea. There's a global shortage of matcha that's impacting businesses both within and outside Japan, and Instagram trends are to blame for it. Already someone to blame? So it says here Japan's Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries stated in 2025 that matcha production has increased from 1,471 tons to 4,176 tons between 2010 and 2023, or around 185% increase. I mean, that's a lot. In other words, the global demand for the tea powder has increased by almost threefold in 13 years. The ministry also stated that more than half of the matcha produced in Japan was now exported internationally, including Hong Kong. It's giving me avocado when avocado toast was trending. Oh my God. Okay, continue. We think the reason for matcha's newfound popularity is that people are finally becoming aware of health benefits. Motivated by these health benefits, many people are switching from coffee to matcha, and according to the cousins, it marks a lifestyle choice. I think people prioritize their wellness much more these days, Kara continues. There's a sharp difference between taking a moment of your day to have a matcha versus having a quick coffee on the go. The rise of matcha has become synonymous with a post pandemic surge in wellness and self care, capturing the hearts and feeds of many across social media. This phenomenon is underscored by a staggering 1.2 million posts featuring the hashtag matcha lover on Instagram in April 2025. Like I said, this was already since 2015. These have been there for the longest time. I don't know where these people have been. What cave were you living in? Anyway, on social media, wellness is a curated concept, one which is often associated with clean girl aesthetics. I mean, this one's more on TikTok, right? This movement centers around the idea of effortless elegance, primarily among women who embrace daily rituals, mindful practices, and a pristine minimalist approach to life. What minimalist? I don't know what you're talking about. When you see these posts, they don't scream minimalist to me because these items that they have that they're curating and showing on these posts have been bought new. I don't think or I don't believe that majority of these have people living in this routine for the longest time. No, 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 you cannot change my mind on this one. But anyway, I digress. Okay. One of the must have elements that complements this clean girl aesthetics is an inclination to drink endless cups of matcha and post about it on Instagram. So, the Guardian's article published on the 5th of April 2025. Skyrocketing demand for matcha raises fears of shortage in Japan, fueled by social media. You see, they're blaming it again. A global boom is outstripping production of the powdered green tea. Soaring demand in Europe, the US, and Australia has prompted warnings of further shortages this year. While consumption of leaf green tea and matcha is declining in Japan, the rest of the world can't get enough, with the global market in matcha alone expecting to surge from $2.8 billion in 2023 to about $5 billion by 2028. This year's tea harvest, which will start this month, will replenish the matcha supply, but relief will be temporary. Uh-oh. Overseas consumption reached a record high last year. Inevitably, social media has been a driver of interest. Yes, I would agree. Matcha content is hard to avoid on TikTok, with users posting to evidence of the health benefits of regular consumption of antioxidant rich green tea, whose caffeine levels are slightly lower than those in coffee. So let's look at People's article published on the 29th of March. 2025. A global matcha shortage is expected this spring. Here's why. A global demand for the antioxidant rich tea based powder has increased by almost threefold since 2010, according to reports. While speaking to The Guardian, Arthur Tong, co founder of Sydney tea supplier Tea Craft, said that while the shortage primarily affects the high quality matcha used in many cafes, it could also begin to trickle down to lower grade options. The primary shortage lies in organic latte grades, But over time, as people look for alternatives, the upper and lower and non organic grades may be affected too, he told the outlet. The association notes that matcha, which can only be made from tea leaves harvested in spring, is scarce by nature. So the fact that supplies are dwindling after winter isn't necessarily a phenomenon. Sorry, a new phenomenon. It also notes that, unlike other teas, tencha, which is the type of leaf from which matcha is derived, must be ground into a fine powder, a process that takes time. Not many people have patience. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm the most patient person either, but just to be realistic here, they say that grinding facilities initially could not keep up with the sudden spike in demand, but this can be remedied. Oh, can it? The association further says that the Japanese government has announced new subsidies to encourage local tea growers to focus more on growing tencha over other forms of tea, which should help prevent future shortages. I don't know how to feel about that. It's kind of like when we have these patches of land used to grow Christmas trees. I mean, we know what happens to the soil, right? If that's just the concentrate of species you're going to use all the time, it's not going to make it a healthy soil. But I mean, I love my matcha, but not so much where I feel like so much more sacrifices can be made on Mother Nature. I mean, I'm not a tree hugger, but there are some sacrifices I can make as well, like moderation, which anyway I do, but I do drink other teas as well. And if they're saying the full leaf teas are also having some difficulty, well, I'm not sure if I'm gonna have tea anymore. There's no way I'm going back to coffee. Anyway, so let's check Women's Health's article, which was published on the 7th of April, 2025. A global matcha shortage is brewing. Here's what you need to know. While matcha shortages are sometimes caused by the tea's harvest schedule and tend to happen periodically across the year, matcha is harvested from late April to early June. Experts are predicting that the matcha from this month's harvest will only plug the gap temporarily. Once again, it's only temporary. It's like a band aid. As reported by the Japan Times, social media, matcha content, and promotion is a huge driver behind the spike in global popularity. Matcha's hold on social media users is clear. You'd be hard pressed to scroll through TikTok without seeing one of Blank Street Coffee's blueberry flavored matcha iced lattes or a new flavor drop from Gen Z favorite Genki. So, yeah, matcha's been swept up in a global wellness wave plastered across every aesthetic feed and cafe menu from Tokyo to TikTok. But here's where it gets ridiculous. The moment people hear the word shortage, logic exits the chat. Suddenly, it's not about taste or health, it's about hoarding. Because, of course, we can always count on a subset of people to act like the world's ending over green powder. This green powder. Let's talk about panic buying, FOMO, and why some folks treat trends like survival gear. Even if the shortage only hits the premium grade matcha, as Arthur Tong pointed out, it's only a matter of time before the ripple effect hits the lower grade stuff too. And that's what worries me. We've seen this movie before. Remember the toilet paper apocalypse of 2020 or the hand sanitizer hustle? People hear the word shortage and suddenly forget how to act. Scarcity taps into this weird collective panic where logic gets tossed out the window. It's no longer about what you need, it's about grabbing as much as you can because everyone else is doing it. Fear kicks in, FOMO takes over, and next thing you know, someone's clearing out a tea aisle like matcha is going to save them from the collapse of civilization. It's absurd. If people start hoarding matcha powder, I hope they consume it before it loses its quality and not that they end up tossing it. I'm hoping that those who easily fall into this trap learn that although it's technically non perishable if unopened, matcha does lose its quality over time because of oxidation, light exposure, and moisture. So the least they can do is to learn how they can keep its freshness with proper storage just so they wouldn't have to toss their stock when they deem it undrinkable, just because they didn't know that the quality changes. Don't waste the matcha powder and don't waste your money. Remember the TikTokers I mentioned earlier? Yes, some of them were already called out for how wasteful they've been when they admitted they poured out the multiple lattes they made in a day. Don't be that person. If you've been following me here and on my socials, then you'd know that I use my matcha for my breakfast meal preps, and what I don't post about are my homemade matcha lattes. Maybe I did, but maybe that was a long time ago. But yeah, I don't really post about it anymore. So I have the powder in stock at home and only buy the amount I need. So, yes, let's please stop pretending matcha is a doomsday prep. If you're going to hoard it, at least know how to store it properly and use it. Because wasting high quality tea just for content, or worse, clout, is not only annoying, it's expensive. Which brings me to the part people love to ignore until their wallet cries, the personal finance side of panic buying. Let's talk about how emotional spending in times of scarcity can quietly sabotage your budget. Panic buying isn't just stressful, it's expensive. Overspending on non essentials can quickly disrupt personal budgets, divert funds from essential savings goals, if you even have any yet, and lead to wasteful practices. Look at these headlines. BBC: I live with my mom because I can't afford to move out. New York Post: too broke to break up. More Americans than ever are staying in relationships because they can't afford to be single. France 24: quite sad. Renters turn to lottery in Spain's housing crisis. How about this list from BuzzFeed? It's been a long time since I've checked BuzzFeed, but this one's about the tasty community who changed their cooking habits because of the rising cost of food prices. I found most of it a net positive, from buying less meat and eating more veg to not having leftovers to waste. But here's a negative one. Fresh produce has gotten so expensive. A couple of tomatoes could be like $5, and that is getting a little pricey. Here's another one. I hate that homemade isn't always the cheaper option like it used to be growing up. So, in different parts of the world, there's a strain when it comes to affording basic necessities such as shelter and food. Even worse for when people can't pay their loans. I won't expect people who say they can't afford to pay for basic necessities to be buying $6 matcha lattes every day. Or can I? It would be cheaper to make it at home, but even here, it's pricey. I buy 30 grams from Yumihana, and that costs 18 francs 15 for one tin. This tin. Matcha is generally more expensive than other types of tea, including green tea, which I drink even more than matcha anyway. The higher the quality grade of matcha, the more expensive it gets. So if you're watching influencer content that glorifies ceremonial or premium grade for a milk based beverage, it's time to come back down to earth. If you're drinking matcha without milk, that I would understand, but not when majority of what you're drinking is milk anyway. Like, hello. There are also brands that label their matcha as latte grade, which means it's been processed to dissolve smoothly in milk. So it's not necessary to buy premium when you're drowning it in milk. Lower grades are enough. And for the influencers who are tossing their latte down the drain after filming their content, just use the lower grade so it burns a smaller hole in your wallet. Ideally, you shouldn't be doing it at all, but who am I to stop you? So if matcha is your one joy in life, fine, but there are smarter ways to enjoy it without sacrificing your entire budget. Apart from trying out latte and culinary grades of matcha, this might actually be the perfect time to explore alternatives and buy with a bit more intention. Get your fix without going financially feral. Now would be the right time to reflect on your spending habits, maybe discover budget friendly alternatives. There are other teas you can drink that have also existed before you even heard of matcha. But why can't they just produce more? Here's what Tatler Asia's article says about that. While there's sufficient land available for tea cultivation, it takes up to 5 years for tea shrubs to mature, meaning current expansions wouldn't address the shortage immediately. After harvesting, the leaves must be dried and ground. To maintain freshness, it's preferable to keep tencha leaves whole until needed. But grinding machines operate slowly, producing only 40 grams of matcha per hour, enough for just 10 to 12 matcha lattes. Remember, this is 30 grams. my goodness. It takes that long. It really asks for a lot of your patience. Whether you have it or not, that's just what it takes right now. Compounding these challenges is a declining number of tea farmers. Oh, data from the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries reveal a drop from over 53,000 farmers in 2000 to just 12,353 in 2020, as many aging farmers struggle to find successors among younger generations, leading to abandoned tea farms. Now, the best line in this article is, of course, cultivating patience and moderation in our consumption could further support sustainable practices. Well said. As I mentioned earlier, personally, I drink green tea more than matcha. And there are different types of green tea like sencha and jasmine. I mean, as you can see, I drink green tea at home. There's also black tea. You've probably heard of English breakfast, Earl Grey, Darjeeling, Assam tea, oolong, pu'er, or Ceylon. In this household, hubby goes straight for English breakfast, while I have the choice of either Earl Grey or oolong when it comes to black tea. He drinks his tea with milk, while I stick to water only. Our middle ground is chai tea, and I have been trying to make it at home since I have the ingredients anyway. A non tea alternative would be mate. Hubby likes it, but it's not for me. So, yes, while matcha is currently the main character, there are so many other teas in the world. But let's zoom out a bit because this conversation isn't just about your morning beverage, but it's also about how we handle trends, scarcity, and our own spending habits long term. If your financial plan crumbles every time something trendy runs low, we've got a bigger problem. Shortages remind us to evaluate our financial preparedness. It's a reality check. They force us to evaluate how prepared we actually are when things go sideways. I keep an emergency food stash for situations like the pandemic or when Mother Nature wreaks havoc. Maybe this mindset is coming from when I was still living in the Philippines, where the country gets hit with strong typhoons every year, deals with flooding that could reach waist high, and where blackouts can happen with little warning. Being prepared wasn't some niche hobby. You learn to stock up and what you can stock up because you need to be practical. So I'm talking basics: canned food, frozen veggies, beans, grains, stuff that won't go bad overnight and doesn't require a trust fund to stock up on. Because let's be honest, when you're prepared, you don't panic. And when you're not panicking, you're not overspending, hoarding, or making emotionally charged purchases that mess up your budget. Stock is built over time, not in one go. This is your reminder. Your emergency fund isn't just for hospital visits or broken appliances, it's also your buffer against hype driven chaos. Financial stability isn't about having the trendiest pantry, it's about not losing your mind when everyone else is. Let's recap. There's a matcha shortage on high quality grade matcha, but instead of panic buying, which stresses you and your wallet, stay calm and use this time to reflect on your lifestyle spending habits to adapt to the situation. If you like this episode and found it helpful, give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future episodes. I'll see you in the next one.